make it short, but we all know I'm long-winded. So one of the ways that God showed up is the weather. The weather was atrocious all around us. I mean, like dark, black clouds, and you're just like, oh my goodness. But then if you just pan up, it was this beautiful sunshine right above us, and it was literally like God said, no, right here there's gotta be sunshine. There were absolutely no shark sightings during the exact same time where all these sharks were. And
we were talking about that before class.
I had prayed.
That's out there right now.
I was like, God, just put a barrier. Just let us be able, because we had over 100 kids in the water. So those are just his miracles, and there was so much camaraderie between everybody and all the moving parts. And when we started this 4 years ago, it just to be able to see the growth, instead of kids not knowing who Jesus is or only knowing a couple stories, kids were raising their hands to answer questions and knew the answers. And I even have a 7-year-old ask a very deep question, which I was surprised about. And one of the kids in my group was actually already following Christ, which was amazing, a 7-year-old. So it was just such an honor to see God moving and see how he's been growing in that area. The church started with 13 people. They now average, I think, 400. And that's 4 years.
Wow.
So to see God move in that way is amazing. And the servant leadership, and it takes away all the bells and whistles and is like, it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done. Jesus loves you. He died for you. We're here to talk to you about it, disciple you, and it just gets down to what is really true, and to see that is amazing.
That's awesome.
So it was just a great thing to be a part of and to see him moving, and it makes me really excited to see how much he's going to grow it for next year.
That is awesome. Although there were plenty of sharks in the water. It's pornography, it's addictions, it's drugs, it's rebellion, it's anger.
It is true, but none of, we didn't have big things, and I do know that there were professions of faith made. They just weren't with my 7-year-old. They were in the higher groups, but it was pretty awesome.
I was just switching that over because we're going to hit NT right later, and that's what he talks about. The sharks. I don't think he's sharks, but equivalent to it is, and it's something that we talked a lot the last several weeks with what's his name, Jordan Peterson, and that's kind of the imagery he uses all the time. Is those swimming in the water, that what it is that's attacking us. And he's using those analogies. So there are lots of sharks in the water, and you were there addressing the much more sinister, much more damaging sharks.
Okay, I gotta share this real quick. This is just, y'all know who this man is right here. He's right here, Rob. And there's Alex and Sandon and Wes McLeese and Jacob and John Moak.
Those are the herds.
Okay. So, and I don't know who that
That's
is.
a Wimberley.
Okay.
Or the, wait.
Yeah, it was one of the Wimberleys.
Cullen Wimberley.
Okay, so people using their gifts. This is Rob Ward using his gift, because I'm sure that was some kind of contraption, learning contraption.
Every week.
Every week.
I love this.
So, thank you, Rob, wherever you are, for using your gift and teaching our kids, because my son Will still talks about that. I will talks about that.
That's awesome. All right, so shall we get going here? What is a man? What is a woman? I thought last week we put conclusion, but I think we put continue. So today we're putting conclusion on the title. So it's conclusion now. We still have Mr. and Mrs. Flat up here in their appropriate gender-specific color. We got all that so we can reinforce our social gender roles. Anyway, I don't know. I can't use all the modern terminology. Okay, so where are we going? We're going to start with this quick little video from the ARC. Well, we'll see. It's only a couple minutes, like 2 minutes.
Healthy, happy children are a mark of a flourishing society. But there is a crisis of mental health amongst young people. Instead of relaxing and resting on networks of resilient individuals, culture in the West risks collapsing on itself. The crisis is most acute amongst young boys, and it's linked to their fathers. As boys become young men, their suicide rates go from equal to girls to 6 times that of young women. There is a crisis of purpose. The ideas of being a warrior, a leader, or a breadwinner are fading. With this void of purpose, boys are feeling alienated, withdrawn, and becoming addicted to immediate gratification. Absent fathers means boys are more likely to drop out of school and engage in criminal behavior. Modern working culture puts strains on families, making it improbable that a child born today will grow up while having both parents. Amongst children born in the 1950s, 1 in 10 had experienced parental breakup by the age of 16. Amongst children born in the 1970s, that number had doubled, so a fifth of children experienced their parents' separation by this time. And amongst children born in the 2000s, that number increased again, meaning 40% were not living in a household with both of their parents. And what about today? Just 1 in 3 children born now can expect to reach adulthood living with both their parents. And if this trend continues and worsens as it has since 2001, that ratio will sink to just 1 in 5. Another way of putting it, 80% of children may never know the benefits of living in a loving home with both their parents. Typically, it's the father who becomes absent, first from the home and then from the lives of their children. There has to be a better story, a reordering of the priorities of our culture and economies is an urgent need indeed. Mark's vision is to build a future that puts the needs of children first. One that encourages resilience and one that supports the sacred love of the Father. So it's time to rediscover just how important a father's role is. It's time for a better story.
All right, that's the last statistic just blows your mind, that of kids born today, if the trends continue where they are, if kids born today, ones that Mary delivers all the time, 1 in 3, 33% of those children will be in an intact family throughout until they're 18, until they're an adult. A third. In only 1950, only 10% of kids experienced living in a home where there wasn't a mother and father. And we scratch our heads. It's the frog being boiled in water. We scratch our head now, oh, culture's so bad, everything's falling apart. And we don't understand, yes, and it's been coming for years and years, and it's the destruction of our families. But anyway, okay, I'm gonna immediately stop and not run down and I get really angry about that, because it's not hard to understand what's going on. It's not hard at all. The question is, are we doing anything about it? I'll argue now, you'll see this later in the notes, that as a church, and I mean, but physical First Baptist Church, but also as the church, the ecclesia, the global church. As a church, we tend to think Satan is attacking the church. Well, he is. I'm not being saying no. Dude, he doesn't have to attack First Baptist Church. He's destroying our families, which destroys our churches. And it's been going on for year after year after year after year. He's destroying our children. He's convincing our 20-something-year-olds that they were a mistake, thus there is no purpose. That's what he's doing to the young, and he's destroying our families, because the church, the building block of the church is the family. That's what it is. So he doesn't have to attack First Baptist directly. He's destroying us by destroying our families, and it's been going on for a long, long, long time. So okay, I'm gonna stop. But just that's kind of where I am right now, is that the attack is in our family, because that is the building block of our church and our culture and our society. Okay, that just blows my mind, guys. Those of us who are a little bit older, so we didn't really feel it as much in the 80s, and those who maybe grew up in the 70s, we were still influenced by what was happening in the 50s and 60s and the slow change. Okay, just imagine, well, you're already seeing it. You're seeing it in the inner city of Detroit. You're seeing it in the inner city of Jackson, Mississippi. You're seeing it everywhere already. Imagine what this world will be like when only 1/3, 33% of children will grow up in a intact family. What is that going to do to our culture? What's it already doing, and what's it ultimately going to do?
Well, I teach 9th graders.
I'm sorry?
I
Oh,
teach
yeah.
157 9th graders. You will not believe it.
And where do you
And I
teach again?
Teach at Brandon.
You're at
Hospital,
Brandon.
But I've taught long enough to see
Yeah.
the change.
Yes. Can you give us some example, or
They're so angry.
they're angry?
They not only don't have fathers, they hate them.
Yes.
They are depressed. They're suicidal. It's just awful. It's well, let me just say awful. heartbreaking. That's why staying there make a difference.
Yes.
It's why we're involved here. Is we're gonna have to figure it out. We can't force families to stay together. We can't create the Beaver Cleaver family and force people. That's not, the church can't do. What we can do, and what we've always been called to do from the 1st century, the 2nd century, when the Romans who didn't want, or the Greeks, Romans and Greeks who didn't want their babies, put their babies on the front porch or out in the woods to die, and the Christians went along, collected them, adopted them, and brought them, would not allow them to basically abort their children from Christians being known as the ones who would go and save the children who were being put on the front steps or left out to die. We can't create the nuclear family, but what we can do is bridge the gap. We can bridge the gap to get them as best we can what missing that nuclear family is going to do to them. And then again, that's why we're here. That's why we're trying to see what's going on there and be involved in our little way in that.
So Joel Charleston, what was it for you? Because he's a fatherless home. His dad left when he was 18 months old. He never knew a dad. So what does that look like in your life?
What do you mean?
How did the church support you?
Men, 2 to 3 men. It was always men. When I think of my childhood, elementary age and below, it was men. It was what men, just in small ways, were there to show me an example. And it was never because they set me down and told me what it was to be a man. It was just seeing them teach me RA, seeing me do this, being there. That's what it was. It was just seeing those people doing those things, men interacting with children. Because I could never see that at home. I was surrounded by all women all the time. Almost. My brother, but he was a nut. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that's why I say we're definitely not up here saying we have it all figured out, because we both came from broken homes. My dad was absent because of divorce and alcoholism, and so what a daughter needs from a father, you know, I didn't.
What's it, Henry? Is it Black? No, it's not Blackaby.
John Eldridge.
John Eldridge. When a father tells a son, "You've got what it takes." That's what a son is looking to his father to tell him, "Do I have what it takes?" That's why he gets on that. That's why at 4 years old, he throws the towel around his neck and he jumps off the edge of the sofa. And the mama screams, "What are you doing? You're going to kill yourself!" And your dad goes, "You got what it takes. You have what it takes." Yes. The dad tells the son, "You have what it takes." The dad tells the daughter, "You're beautiful. You're beautiful." The daughter needs to hear she's beautiful and special to a man in the right way, and the son needs to hear he has what it takes. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. We're not even close to this. All right, let's get
I
back
was
on
thinking
this.
about what she said about the classroom and the boys being angry and the girls are being promiscuous.
They don't have a
That's
man.
because their answers to those questions
They have
are not
no
coming.
man in their life telling them how to use that masculinity, how to control, how to use the aggressiveness. Because there's nothing wrong with aggressive. I tell my boys that there is nothing wrong with aggressiveness. It's how it's directed. And a godly man directs his son's aggressiveness over time to turn it into a warrior. To a warrior in whatever way that looks. That's what the father does. But absent a father, that aggression turns into anger, bitterness, and violence. Look at your inner city. That's what we're seeing. But anyway, okay, stop. We gotta get on the move. So I'll just talk off the top of my head on this because I'm just passionate about all this. Okay, the father is to orient. This is sort of kind of from last week, but the father is to orient everything upward. That's the structure. He is to point his walled garden. You remember last week we talked about the walled garden. That is what the Hebrew word paradise, that's actually what the Hebrew word means. It's a walled garden. So in Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3, where it's talking about the Garden of Eden, the paradise, it's a walled garden. That's what it is. Okay, he is to point the walled garden towards the divine. He is the spiritual leader of the family. That's the triangle. So that's what this is. It's here, and everything is to be oriented that way. That's his job. That's also why Adam was condemned is the wrong word. Adam was blamed, if you will, for the fall, not Eve. Eve's the one who ate the apple, blame her. No, Adam was responsible. Why? Because he was the one to guard the family, to orient it to the top, and he was standing there and let the serpent, he let the evil serpent, the sharks in the water, he let them in and he let them destroy his family. So it was his fault. It wasn't Eve's fault, it was his fault. He was the responsible one because that's his role. So that's that modern, especially modern Western American, everybody's responsible for their own actions. That's not what God says. God says you're the leader. You're responsible for everybody's actions. It's a different weight there. It's a different mindset. Okay. There is a hierarchy in these roles. Note, Adam is held, I already said that. Adam lost the patriarchal spirit. There's a patriarchal spirit, a feminine spirit. The two come together to create one. That's what it means that the two come together and leave their father and mother and come, we'll read this in a minute, become one flesh. What's happening there is both spirits have to come together to be complete, to be balanced, if you will. But Adam lost that. Adam lost that and allowed the serpent to attack his family. Okay. Practical examples. We've already said all those stats. Those stats are really wild. Ephesians 5:22 through 23. We're at the bottom of page 1.
I'm gonna read this because in my Bible it says exhortations to households. So I thought that was appropriate. And I like the book called Love and Respect. It's by Eggerichs, and I actually read the book about mothers and sons first, but when you read it, he's talking about women needing love and men and boys needing respect, and it's straight from the scripture how God designed men and women. And like Jordan Peterson said, men are concerned about things, women are concerned about relationships and love, and it's so pure. Anyway, this is Ephesians 5, and I'm convicted lately how I don't, because men are aggressive, it's really easy to point the finger at what they're doing wrong. Like, I see this in relationships in my office every day, when it's very easy to say, he cheated, he did this wrong, he's withdrawn from the family, he doesn't love us. And then I've been convicted lately on how many times we as women do not provide the respect, and how important it is to men to have respect. So, and what that really means. Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, because the husband is the head of the wife, as also Christ is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. But as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, to sanctify her by cleansing her with the washing of the water by the word, so that he may present the church to himself as glorious, not having a stain or wrinkle or any such blemish, but holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one has ever hated his own body, but feeds it and takes care of it, just as Christ also does the church, because we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two become one flesh. This mystery is great, but I'm actually speaking with reference to Christ and the church. Nevertheless, each one of you must also love his own wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. One quick aside is, I think about me personally, and like I said, that I'm convicted that we are to be one flesh, and it's very easy for Mama Bear to defend her child. You all see it. Somebody attacks your child, you're like, wait a minute, they did this right, and we don't necessarily take that role with your spouse. We let them take more daggers, more arrows, let's say. You know how it is. I can criticize my own child, but don't let anybody else criticize my own child. But do we really support our husbands that way? And you didn't even know I was going to say this.
But it's true. We talked about this a little bit over the years, and I've seen it. Like when I've had enough and really get on our board, or I decide it's time for tough love. It's time to tell them the truth, and that truth is going to hurt. I've seen her literally grab her mouth, and she'll just stop. And I laugh internally while I'm sitting there angry at our kid. This has been years ago, really now, but I've seen her grab her mouth, and I know what she's doing. She's putting that into practice. She's saying, "I would never approach it this way, but he needs to, and they probably need to hear it." And she'll like grab her mouth. I've seen her do it.
But anyway, one thing Jordan Peterson said is women are I loved what he said last week in that video, that women are the ones that bring the outsiders in. You know, men have to provide the structure and hierarchy.
A voice for the weak and
order.
those who are outside, yeah.
And we're the voice for the weak, and when you think about that in your prayer life, that's what we are. We are the ones that are bringing all the concerns to the Lord, and that's why if we get out of control, it's anxiety. But do we bring the concerns about our husbands like we do for our children? I think about that a lot, is, you know, learning to understand what is going on with him and what he's concerned about, and making as one flesh what his concerns are, my concerns, and praying about that, bringing that to the Lord. Lord, have you considered what's going on here? And not only praying for my children, but praying for my husband. Okay?
And as a man, I have none of this thoughts. I don't even know what she's talking about. But anyway.
Okay, moving on.
Moving on. All right. We are to leave our father, but I'm going to kind of hit this quickly. Complementarianism, theological view that men and women are different, but completely, but complementary roles in society.
This is not good in society. This is not kosher to say out in the world today. You can't say we're complementarian.
Christians spend much time. I've kind of already hit on this just in my ranting at the beginning, so I'm going to hit this quickly. Christians spend much time talking about how to build up the church. We spend far too little time supporting the family, while Satan spends his time attacking the family. That's the key attack that ultimately destroys individual churches. It's on the family. Satan knows if he can destroy the family, he will also weaken and eventually destroy any individual church. The family is the building block of God's good governance, encouraged and strengthened through the church. So the structure is, the family is the building block. It's encouraged and strengthened through the church. So the ministry is done through the church. The building block is the family. Human beings are designed to thrive under God's good order and will self-destruct when God's order is rejected or corrupted, whether this is personal, on an individual, at a family level, or in the culture as a whole. At any level, when God's order is destroyed, perverted, look at the LGBT, that whole concept. What's that entire pride, which by the way was the first sin? What happened in the garden? Pride. It was pride. You will be like God. You will know the difference between good and evil. You will have the secret knowledge from Will last night. You will have the secret knowledge. That's what Satan promised them. You will know something that only God knows. He didn't want you to know. Secret knowledge. That's what secret societies are all about. Is they provide, we have secret, and that's what the Gnostics were. The Gnostics that Paul writes about so much in your New Testament, it was secret knowledge. We are a small group and we hold secret knowledge, and you're not wise enough. You come to us, we will give you the secret knowledge that leads to completely contrary to the Bible. But that was Satan's first lie. And he approached pride and secret knowledge. And that's what the fall was. It was, yeah, I'll take that pride, I'll take that. I want to be like God, and I want the knowledge that he apparently is holding from me. That was the lie. And she bit it. It's the same lie we hear today. Why did I even say all that? Because God's order is rejected or corrupted, whether that is personal, family, or cultural. We see that even culturally now. I was saying pride. The whole idea of the LGBT and all that, man, that is, if that's not just a blatant in the face of a Christian, it's taking this order. I don't have a pen. I've never run on the board, so I wanted to run on the board today, and I don't have a pen now. Is take this triangle and flip it upside down. And that's what the LGBT is doing. It's saying, destroy that. God isn't here. God is down here. God begins with you. You are God. And the structure and the order is anything you want it to be. And I'm here to tell you, the author of the universe, the creator of the universe, also created the structure that leads. I like the way Jordan, I think it was either Jordan, it could have been Mike Heiser who uses this phraseology. It's God's good, or maybe N.T. Wright this week. The structure that God puts in the Bible, that our culture is rebelling so hard against, is the structure that leads to the most human flourishing. That's what it's designed for. It's not perfect. As it's played out in the real world, it's not perfect. And like I said, you can't go to one of your 9th grade mothers who's had 4 different husbands and multiple children. I mean, that intact family is never going to turn into this again, probably. But but that structure, the structure that is a biblical structure for the family is what leads to human flourishing. And that's why we support it, that's why you push for it, that's why when it breaks down, you supplement the things that it's missing. Keep moving there, Joe.
This whole section about complementarianism reminds me, 15 or 20 years ago or something like that, I used to spend a lot of time listening to Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
And he would talk about, men and women finances, all this kind of stuff, and he'd say there's always one person in the relationship that's the spender, one's the saver, one's the planner, one's the spontaneous.
Let's not talk about that right now.
And he
You
says,
haven't seen her Amazon.
that's the way it's supposed to be. They said, because if both of y'all were the same, one of you would be unnecessary.
Good point, I love that.
And
Both of you are the same, one of you would be unnecessary.
That reminded me of the whole, the roles of men and women. Our whole culture right now is trying to say, men and women are equal, there's no difference, whatever.
No difference, yeah.
You can even be one if you're not.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Like,
You can be
it's
reversed.
really just interchangeable.
That
Interchangeable.
doesn't stand up to the idea that, well, if men and women truly are equal, then why is there any difference,
But in the trenches, what I'm confused with is that we are designed, God's design is complementary strands.
Yes.
Is adenine to thymine, guanine to cytosine, they are different but have to be joined together. And that
that's
viruses
good.
are single-stranded and cause us so many problems. They do not have a complement. And so I kinda always try to infuse that in there, particularly from a Christian standpoint, because his design is complementary.
Interesting.
In reverse orders.
Yes.
Awesome.
That is really good. I
All
wanna
right.
steal that one.
You want to do this, does the church support families enough? We'll hit this quick. Yes, the feminized church. A few weeks ago, we've been really hitting this book. We've kind of sort of gotten off of the specifics in the book, but the whole study's kind of based around it. It's why men hate going to church. Which really, if you're interested in this, get this book. It's really interesting. Not that I support the last 4 or 5 chapters is, all right, how should the church look? Maybe you agree, disagree with the specific recommendations he has, but he diagnoses the problem very well. So why do men hate church? And it goes through the feminization of our churches these days. And what he means by feminization doesn't mean just women. He means even men who, like me, have grown up in the church. So I'm used to walking to a room and holding everybody's hand and smiling and all that kind of stuff. And his point is, you have a man who's not involved. First of all, even men who are involved in the church, some of them. But you have a man who's exploring the church. And he walks in. He says, "Are you insane? I'll hold another man's hand." And just the mindset that we've created in the church is a very feminized mindset, and that's when, well, anyway, I'm gonna stop there. We've talked about that in the past. That's what this book is about. It's just reminding us that there's a reason why on a lot of your smaller churches, especially your older churches, you get 60, 70, and 80% females in the pews and not men. And there's a reason for that, too. All right, so the feminized church, the church markets to, serves, and is appealing to those who show up. That's kind of normal. That's what it does, and that's primarily women, and that's the book. Youth, I'm going to skip this example about youth minister search. Question, what is our discipleship structure at First Baptist Church? This is just a pet peeve of ours. You may disagree with this. You really might disagree with what we're about to say. But anyway, what's our discipleship structure here at our church?
The D groups?
D groups. D groups.
And what else?
And how do you structure a D group? We kind of have it written here, but how's the D group structured?
You have like one person who's the leader, and then you have like 3 to 4, or maybe sometimes 5, I guess, in there. So like if I was to have one, it would be me and then like 3 other women, and then each of them would break off and create their own
Right. And the key was 3 other women. We separate them. We separate men, women, structure. And I'm not saying we should not have D groups. I think there is definitely a role for men being with other men and women being with other women. But I would also argue that's the natural, that you don't even need a structure for that. 3 women are gonna meet at Starbucks and talk. That's what they're gonna do. Now you may have to force them to smile with it. It's just true. That is totally 100% natural for women. Men are gonna have to go, I have so much to do, but I'm committed to going. Men have to do it for us. I see you laughing because you're thinking the same thing, or you're thinking, I got my D group again. The church told me I have to do this. I'm gonna go meet with these 3 men. And that's fine. There's nothing, men need men in their lives. I would just argue it doesn't have to be structured with 2 to 3. You have to divide it very, that's Christian people reading their church growth books. And I've been in the 80s, every time a Sunday school class gets to 8, you have to divide. All that stuff annoys me, because all that is, it's churches coming along, taking what's happening out there in the culture, generally the corporate world. Oh, this is how corporations grow. Let's see if we can do that in our church. And it's just, that's way too general. All right, stop, Joel. Move on. Yes.
This is a pet peeve of mine because of time. That's it, time. And if we're having a lot of trouble in our families, and we only have so many hours of the day, days of the week, months of the year, how much time, I and I'm not saying don't do WMU, don't do women's groups. I mean, I speak at women's things, but, how much time do you have in the family, and how much do we support the family? The husband and wife, the family, the children. And we're all supposed to have like dinner with our families a couple of times a week and do Bible study together. But how many times do we do that? I'm just asking the question. Look at our weekly bulletins, and if you did everything that you could possibly do as a woman, I'll just speak for women, you could have like a in the middle of the day Bible study, you could have a after 5 Bible study, you could have a WMU group, you could go and take and do some kind of service project with the women.
And the men generally don't want to do any of this. So understand the difference. Men look at that and go, oh, no.
Does
No,
anybody
that's why they don't show up.
do y'all
They
see
just don't
that?
wanna do it.
Do y'all see that? Or is it just me? Because I have to say no to a lot of those things. Pick me personally, I have to say no.
But what's our, I don't want to go too far into that, because you're going to attack somebody's sacred cow. The WMU, are you attacking WMU?
I'm
You're going to get us
not,
kicked out of the
I'm
church.
not,
No, what we're saying is, let me say it like this. We do these D groups, they're gender specific, and there are some reasons for it, blah, 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 but anyway, so we do that. When do we take a 24-year-old man who's been married for 6 months to a 23-year-old woman, and they're pregnant with their first, they've been married for 6 months, let's say they've been married for 1.5 years, and they're pregnant, or they have their first child. That man needs to know how to disciple his wife. He doesn't need to meet with me. He might need to meet with me in the sense of trying to maybe give him some of my experience. But when do we set him down and say, this is how you disciple yourself and your family. This is how you bring up that child in the admonition of the Lord. This is how you build him up. This is how you build her up. Here's how you love her, and this is how she respects him. I would argue it's much more powerful to bring those two together and let them disciple each other through an outside force than it is to separate men and women. Anyway, I'm not saying that one's wrong, bad. What I'm saying is, when do we do that? We do that when they're facing divorce, and we make them go to summit counseling. We do it on the backside. Anyway, I need to stop there, but somehow we need to build our discipleship within the family first. Anyway, I don't know. Again, that's more my opinion. It's not. I can't find the Bible other than I'll say that the whole church and everything is built on the. To me, it's a remnant of Jewish culture, because in Jewish culture, first century, they separated men and women. But you read the New Testament, look at all the examples of the churches and the meetings in the New Testament. What do you read? Do you read any separation in there? I don't read any. None. It's women, men. They talk about the women whose houses they're meeting in. They talk about the women who are supporting Jesus' ministry. And so, anyway.
Go ahead, Marty.
I was just commenting.
Yeah, this is probably more me bringing this up than for Joel, but I talk to the deacons' wives, I see them, and they're my patients, and they're who I work with, and with the youth, and it is the women. It's the women doing the things. It's the women leading the youth group. Now, when it came to the youth minister search committee, that was men that searched and found the youth minister, but it's the women that are doing the ministry with the youth. And those boys, my boys, 3 boys in the family, they're getting teaching from majority women. And at school, they're getting teaching from 99% women. And I think about this because I have sons, you know, and I'm just like, where are we discipling men? And where are they getting it from? They're getting it from women. Even our youth minister, you know, we have a women's intern, a female intern too, who teaches half of the time. So I'm just thinking about these things more, being a mother of sons, and how do you teach that? And if our families are breaking apart, how are we supporting our families? We have a lot of things separate, but we don't have a lot of things together. I mean, encouraging that family time together. That's just my body horse.
This is such a weird Sunday school class this morning, because y'all are just hearing our thoughts. What if we took 20 men's D groups? So if there were 3 of them in each one, 20, let's say 10 would be 30 men. That's about all the youth there are right now. What if those 30 men, instead of meeting once a week with 2 other men that they really don't want to meet with, especially if they have to hold their hands and pray, what if those men all met once a week at Starbucks with one of the male youths here, with one of the men, with one of the boys? I wonder what that relationship would do in rebuilding our family and our structure and teaching boys how to be men. What if it was an outward focus instead of an inward focus? I don't know. I just thought this literally sitting here. I don't know. But instead of leading those boys' development, and the girls also, of course, but leading those boys' development up to chance. Anyway. Okay.
And I'm gonna pick on the deacons.
I really wanted to get
I
to
think
it right.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but it's a
go ahead.
good, look, it's 10-10.
Okay.
There, I think about, what are my friends and colleagues, men, what are they doing? They're doing, the pastor search committees, the youth minister search committees, the Lord's House committee, where they walk around and make sure we're secure. They open the door for their greeters. I mean, y'all hear what I'm saying?
No. You're
Well, I
saying,
worked at a school here in Jackson where the women were in charge of the devotion each week, and you, at faculty, and you drew up a time when you did. But when the woman would stand up to do devotion, the men got up and left the room, because they believe in the scripture that they are not to be under the instruction of the woman. But we taught boys.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I guess boys aren't.
But I think there is some biblical foundation for why some people think that way.
There is, and as y'all know, a lot of you folks who follow what's going on in the Southern Baptist Convention and all, right? The convention just met a few weeks ago. There's a huge fight over whether women can have the title pastor and all that. We won't get into that today. There's so much stuff that's floating around and all that. And what does it really mean? And anyway, so yeah, that's still a very,
That's today.
that's today.
Yeah, it's
That's a
today.
big issue within the Southern Baptist Convention right now.
And as much as this book is not everything, like we disagree with some of it, but the statistics are here. Like, who comes to church? The statistics are here, and what are we gonna do about it? I think about it with my boys. I think about, who's gonna teach them? Are they emulating the female spirit or the male spirit and the leadership of a family, Anyway,
All right,
that's
so
my
what-
hobby horse.
we got just a couple of minutes before we're really going. Well, there's real stuff there. I really wanted to introduce y'all to N.T. Wright. He's fascinating. It's just, we've enjoyed getting to know N.T. Wright. We're gonna share that with y'all. But this is any discussion. This is kind of crazy today. We haven't done a lot of scriptural stuff with this, Paul. What do you got?
I'm thinking of just the discussion here as far as all these things that we're talking about, there are phases where they're good. But it's a challenge of trying to make something that's globalized for everything. We can't, there are phases of life that need change. And when you're trying to have somebody who's at a church level set up a structure to meet all the needs, you're inevitably not gonna meet all those needs. And the challenge is, it kind of goes back to the family to go to like a church. You can't have a healthy church without healthy families, but also the inverse of that is the church, the healthy church is trying to reinforce those families and bring the ones that are in error back to God's order. It ultimately takes investment in time. It's like you said, the first century church is like they lived in the community. They were taking care of their own families, but they also were inter-ministry between the families, and it takes time, it takes commitment and investment. And if you have that investment in that community, in that level of familiarity with people around you, you see the needs and you adapt what you're doing to help those people in need.
Wow, that's a good point. When you're that close, you see the need and you adapt quickly. When you have a structure, a hierarchical structure, you don't really see the need, and that's, yeah.
It's like, if you're looking at corporate or organizational level, you can't see every individual. You're gonna leave somebody out in those scenarios. There's no way to be 100% effective. And that when you're looking at it at that level, you have to be at the interpersonal level to see those things.
Interesting. So So what is our main point, even though we've talked a lot about the church too, our main point so far, what we'll finish hitting on soon, is engaging. Like we're talking about, how do you engage? How do you take God's good order, his structure, that's your mission. Your mission is to go out there, engage people, and to spread God's good governance throughout his creation. That's what the Edenic mandate is. That's what your purpose is. I love this today. I was telling Meredith, I said, you do realize the Edenic mandate is repeated multiple times in the Old Testament. It starts in Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3, and then it's repeated again and again and again. It's repeated several times in the Old Testament. Is it thrown out in the New Testament? What do you think the Great Commission is? The Great Commission is the Edenic mandate. What does the Edenic mandate start with? Be fruitful and multiply and spread out. What's the first part of the Great Commission? As you are going, disciple them. So what is the Edenic mandate? Go, spread out, and then it talks about how you take dominion over God's creation, and you manage God's creation, and you bring his good governance to the world as God's representative. Come forward to what Jesus said. Go as you are going, spread out. As you are going, disciple them, and he gives you the details, teaching them all that I have commanded you. In other words, take my good governance to the world. It's a repeating of the Edenic mandate in light of the Messiah. So now we know who the Messiah is. He's here, and now we look back to our Old Testament, and we saw that Edenic mandate. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And Jesus says, yeah, and in light of me, what does that good governance look like? It looks like discipling them and teaching them all that I've commanded you. That is taking God's good governance to the entire rest of the world. So the Great Commission is just the Edenic mandate in light of the Messiah. Isn't that cool? I thought that was kind of cool. Nobody else cares about that. I thought that was cool. So about this morning, I thought, that's just a repeating of the Edenic mandate. Okay, I thought it was cool. Y'all have to. What else?
I think it's cool.
What else?
Anybody else?
Any other comments? All right, this week I was going to have y'all do a card, but none of this worked out. I want y'all to try to, we'll ever do this, give you an assignment. Homework. Think about, right now, before we walk out here, who is struggling, who in your life has this order completely messed up? They're either, the order's messed up, they're either addicted, they're strung out, they're crazy nervous, they're eaten up with anxiety, they're contemplating divorce, I don't know. Who has this order messed up? How can you, as God's representative, interject yourself into their life this week and bring little bitty tiny pieces of God's order into their life? That's your vocation. That is actually your job, your purpose. Your purpose is to represent him and to bring God's good order, that Edenic mandate, into the lives of a fallen world. So who can you do that to this week? We always say engage. I'm not going to ask you to engage. I want you to do your purpose this week. Find somebody who is disordered and engage them in some way. That is your job. You represent God. You are to bring, as his representative, as his imager, you are to bring his order into a fallen world and attempt and try to influence this world to reorder themselves up toward the divine. Who can you reorder to the divine this week? I promise you there will be dozens of people if you think that way. Who can I reorder to the divine? And I'm going to ask you who it was next week. I won't put anybody on the spot. Praise that here.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time together as a group of believers, a family, your family. And Lord, thank you for helping us to see the perfection that you made us, the complementarianism of creation in Genesis 1, that you created male and female, and that only at that point did you say that was good, Lord, that we need each other, and that we are a picture of Christ in the church. And Lord, help us to live that way. Help us to be united as one flesh with Christ, just as we are to be that way in our families. Lord, thank you, however, that out of brokenness, and we can open your word and see from the very first family all the way through the Old Testament, New Testament, that you took broken people and brought them life and meaning and purpose, and that you didn't give up on brokenness. thank you for not giving up on brokenness. And Lord, help us to show that to those we encounter this week, that He hasn't given up on brokenness, that we can change our spiritual family tree because of being united with you in Christ. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for loving us so much that you laid down your life for us. In Jesus' name.
Amen. All right, so we'll get to NTW soon, NT right soon.
You never told us last week about got back to the lady in the road.
I did it afterwards. Someone said, real quickly, the lady in the road, y'all remember that those who were here 2 weeks ago, we came to church one morning, we saw this lady passed out on High Street, and when I say passed out, covered in all these blankets. You couldn't see her face, all you could see was her legs, and her legs were literally, she was sitting right there at Whataburger. She was laid out on High Street, Whataburger, passed out, wrapped in a blanket, and her legs were sticking out into the street. So I knew she was a white lady because I could see her white legs. That's all I could see. And I mean, and there was trash and garbage all around her. And all these people were passing her. Guess where they were all going? First Baptist Church in Galloway, I'm sure, because that's where it was. And I saw her too. And I, golly, how horrible that was. And I said, that bad. We're rushing to get here. So we get here, we do our teaching. When we leave, we go to City Church, and we went Pearl Street. Didn't see her. Didn't think much about it again. We came back. So now we're talking 2 hours later, 3 hours later. We come back, we get to church, and then we leave. Well, we always come back to pick up our son's car. So that's why we're back here again. And so we're now going down High Street, and she was still there. And God just smashed me in the face and said, oh my gosh, hundreds, if not thousands of Christians have passed that woman who literally, y'all, if the person wasn't paying attention and they hit that curb, they would have killed her. That's how, I mean, her legs were sticking out in the street. And it just, I was overwhelmed with, anyway. So I thought, what do you do? Because you have to worry about safety, you got to think about all that. And so anyway, so I pulled over and I called the police first. And the police, weren't very helpful. You didn't talk to AMR. But fine, I called Jackson Police. They immediately, but they did patch me through. They patched me through the AMR and got a sweet lady on AMR. I just explained to her what was going on. Here's what's happening. She needs help. She's going to get killed if a car hits her. And I said she may already be dead because she had not moved in 3 hours. She was still laying exactly the same way. So anyway, we called them, waited a few minutes. We went home and then we drove back. And a few minutes later, she was gone. That apparently they did come and anyway. So that was the resolution of that. And I was just overwhelmed all for the last 2 weeks of that's our purpose. That's our purpose. That's our purpose. She is utterly disordered. Nothing in her life is pointing her to the divine. She's on drugs. She's passed out. She's a dregs of society, as some may view her. And no, God says she's my child. I created her. She is disordered. Yes, she's made horrible decisions. Yes, she's been destroyed by drugs. Yes, she's the one who probably stuck the needle in her arm. Probably so. And I still love her anyway. And I sent you here to bring, y'all, this is what I'm talking about. And you should have got me on. God has sent us here to bring His order to people like that. And one of the things I want to say is we moralize everything. We think we're good with God if we don't lie, cheat, steal, or cuss, or hang out with anybody who does. Garbage. That's what the Pharisees did. The Pharisees had their list of morals. They held to their morals very strongly, so they were right with God. And who was the only person that Jesus condemned? The moralizers. The ones who said, I've got my list of morals, I hold to my morals, and thus I'm good with God. Garbage. You can be as moral as you want to be. You cannot lie, cheat, or steal and pretend that you are perfectly moral and never say a bad word. And if you're not doing the purpose of God, what's the purpose of God? To represent Him as His imager and bring order to a chaotic world. That's your purpose. If you're not doing that, you are not okay with God. You're nothing more than a Pharisee. You're nothing more than a Pharisee because God has His morals, stuck to His morals, and says, I must be good with God. Check. Garbage. You have to do your purpose. You want to be right with God, do your purpose. And I'm not, you know me, y'all know me. I'm not like a social justice warrior. I'm not saying go out. I'm saying just represent God and bring order into His creation. That's all I'm saying. I don't believe government should do it. Matter of fact, there's my conservative. I'm not pulling up my conservative bootstraps here. I don't want government to do it. The only reason government's having to do it is because we're not. All of us Christians who hang around as conservative, y'all, I shouldn't be saying all this. All of us Christians, conservative Christians, who run around talking about how horrible government is and how terrible welfare is and all that kind of stuff. I actually agree with every bit of that. But I agree with it because it's our job and we're not doing it. How can you blame crazy culture from taking all our tax dollars and trying to create a welfare situation because the church ain't doing it? If we do it, there would be no need. How about, instead of complaining about it, we take away the need for a welfare system? Okay, stop, I'm gonna stop.